Check out this thing. This is the Waggy 34. It's a monster pedal board. 34 inches from right to left, and this is the flagship model of their brand. You can tell that it comes with two levels there. So this top piece flips up, and you can throw anything under there that you don't need access to. Stuff like the power supply, maybe you have interfacing pedals to deal with going to and from an effects loop on an amp, or maybe you want to throw compression and overdrive in there, pedals that you set and then you forget about. That can be a great place to do that. So essentially I want to walk you through what this big pedal board build is going to be on the channel in the next couple weeks. If you're watching in the future, there's a playlist link in the description. Make sure you start at the beginning, and if you are interested in it, you can watch through the end where I'll be building this entire thing start to finish. We're going to route it with MIDI switching pedals, stuff with presets, as well as a true bypass relay switcher, which is what the subject of this video is. And we'll show how I'm going to use that in combination with the Morningstar MC8, which is controlling the wet effects. So a quick visual layout of what's happening here. All of the preset pedals, wet effects that have presets on them, are going to go on the top piece here. So the Empress Ecosystem and Reverb, the Wampler Terraform, which does modulation, and then the HX Stomp, which is handling some stereo modulation and some amp and cabinet simulation. On the right here, we're going to have, I think, two expression pedals, the Vertex Boost for solos, and then we're going to throw in some extra stuff right in this area, auxiliary pedals, stuff that I might want to change out depending on what the gig is. Now, in the very bottom, this is where all the controlling for the pedal board is going to be happening. Alright, first of all, we're going to have the Morningstar MC8, which is going to be controlling all of the wet effects, the stuff that's up here. And then what the subject of this video is, we're going to have a true bypass switcher, a relay switcher, on the very bottom to control some compression and overdrive and fuzz options that will be stored primarily in this section underneath. So these are pedals that, again, I don't have to touch the knobs on ever. I basically just set them and forget about it. And so I'm going to walk you through today what I'm going to be using this relay switcher for, and hopefully make you decide, have you decide for yourself, if this is something that is useful to you in your rig or not. It's a pretty easy thing to get started with, but it does involve a bit of setup work. So I'm going to show you the board that I have wired up right now. This is basically a trial board, so I can figure out what I like and what I don't like before I put this thing together. This is my old Pedal Train PT1. This thing is super heavy right now. It's being powered with a Voodoo Labs 4x4, right? And we've got essentially all my wet effects that are just being switched just manually right now before I get into the switcher. But mainly what I'm going to be showing you now in this video is how I'm using, see that little black piece at the bottom? I can't point to it because I'm holding this like 50-pound thing. That is the One Control Agamede loop switcher, so the relay switcher. And this is controlling just the overdrive, the compression, and the fuzz pedals here. I'll walk you through that now, and I'll show you how everything's wired up. So briefly, I just want to talk through how this pedal board's wired up so that as we go further in the video, you'll have an understanding of how it's all working together with everything else and what my reasoning might be for the decisions that I made. The first thing you plug into here is the relay switcher, the Agamede tail loop, and this has 6 loops on it. It's got 6 buttons, but actually only 5 programs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This other one is a bank switch, so this is essentially presets that control how these programs work. Alright, so it's got 6 loops in it, and because I ran out of space, I didn't use the first loop. I just used loops 2 through 6. So the second loop, which is the first one actually, once we come out of here, the second loop is controlling the J-Rocket Archer, which is a Klon style pedal. I use this as a boost to account for the difference in output between single coil pickups and humbuckers. So if I'm on a gig where I'm using more than one guitar with different output levels, I'll have bank 1 here assigned for humbucker pickups, where this pedal is always bypassed. The Klon's never being used. When I want to switch to a single coil guitar, I hit the bank button. It goes to bank 2. Select it there, and then all of my presets here include the Klon, except for the fuzz, because that would just be too much gain. So all of the presets now include the Klon up front. Okay, so I'll switch back to bank 1, talk through the rest of it. In loop 3, so again, loop 1 is bypassed, I'm not using that. Loop 2 is the Klon. In loop 3, this is the fuzz. Loop 4 is the the compressor here by Origin Effects. Loop 5 is the light gain channel on the Wampler Dual Fusion, and then loop 6 is the heavier gain channel. The way these work is they're not specifically set up just as loop buttons. So like this doesn't do loop 2, loop 3, loop 4. It doesn't work like that. These are programs. So the program, you can assign any combination of these pedals to this switch. If I wanted the fuzz and the compressor to be controlled on this switch, I would go into edit mode and I would edit it so that loops 3 and 4 are being engaged with program 1 switch. Remember, this one's just for changing banks, which is presets for the entire thing. So program 1, I could say, is these two pedals. Program 2, I could say maybe just the compressor. Program 3, I wanted to do compressor and the overdrive here. Program 4, I could say compressor, light gain, and the heavy gain overdrive. And then if I wanted to, program 5 could be all of these pedals. So essentially in bank 2, to reiterate, bank 2, program 1 would be the fuzz. Program 2 would be the archer to account for the difference in volume between single coil and humbuckers. So program 2, the switch would be the archer and the compressor. Program 3 is the archer and the light drive. Program 4 is the archer and both of these drives or something, and then program 5 would be like 3 of those. Whatever you want to set it up as. And the nice thing about having a switcher is that I've assigned it so it's just got 2 banks now, but I could do like 8 banks or like 20 or something on this thing, I forget. But I don't know, if I was running a really complicated setup where I had different guitars and I wanted a very specific setup for each guitar, I could assign each of those banks to work well with one guitar if I wanted to. Or I could throw in some other effects in there, and you know, there's so many different ways you can use this. I'm just explaining how I like to use it. So anyway, the last pedal would be the overdrive, heavy overdrive channel in the Wampler. So out of the switcher, it goes to the Vertex boost, which this expression is making it function as a volume pedal as well. If I want a solo boost, I hit that, and then this still works as a volume pedal. It's pretty cool. It comes out of the boost, goes to the pitchfork, which is doing, you know, like octave up and down stuff and some other cool intervals whenever I want to use it. And then into the Electro-Harmonix Freeze, which is a sustain pedal for the guitar, basically. Like a sustain pedal works on the piano. I love this pedal. And then that'll go to the HX Stomp. This is doing amp and cabinet simulation. From the HX Stomp, it goes out of the effects loop in this thing, through the Empress ecosystem, then to the reverb. You know what those do, just by the names. Back into the HX Stomp. If I'm only using, you know, 1 amp, or I'm just going in mono, I can just plug 1 plug into here, and it'll sum everything to mono. Everything was wired up in stereo. But if I use mono, I just plug in with 1 chord, and then I switch it on, and it'll sum to mono automatically. But I can do stereo very easily if I want to. And also, just for home use, I use the HX Stomp pretty frequently as an interface. It's such a great pedal, one of my favorite ones. So basically that's how I've got this wired up. Again, the way the loop switcher works, for program 1, for this switch, I can have any combination of pedals that I want. Program 2, that can be a different combination. And then aside, this is all in bank 1. If I want to switch to a different bank, we've got 5 more presets of combinations of whatever pedals you have plugged into this thing. You can plug into up to 6 loops. I'm only using 5. I know this whole thing can sound pretty confusing. It took me a little bit to figure out how it was working. This is a new thing for me as well. If you've got questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I can get back to you and hopefully answer those questions for you. And if you're enjoying this video, stay tuned for more stuff. Hit the subscribe button and the like button if you feel so inclined. So let's get on to the playing samples. So when you power up the board, your switcher is going to be bypassed, and essentially what we're getting is the clean sound. Program 1, and by the way, I'm in bank 1, by the way, because I'm playing a humbucker guitar. Program 1 here is going to be my fuzz pedal. And if I want to go back to clean, I just press that again and it'll bypass everything, go back into the clean sound. So this, at this point you might say, you know, like this sounds like a lot of extra work just to turn a pedal on and off. But the reason I like to do this is because if you're coming up to a transition in a song where you've got to turn that pedal off and turn 2 more on, that's 3 button switches, whereas if you can switch between program 1, which is this pedal, and program 5, which is both of these, both channels on the Dual Fusion, then essentially we've switched that 3-button maneuver down to just 1, which means it's going to happen right on beat 1 in this part of the song that you need it to happen in. So here's program 1 with the fuzz. And then program 5. It just lets me do my job a little bit better in a live situation. I can focus on playing the guitar and not on tap dancing and trying to get that transition as quick as possible. It's just super simple now. And additionally, when I switch to the bigger board, all these pedals can be hid underneath that top layer, and I'm not gonna have to worry about kicking a knob and ruining the setting that I tediously set up to sound perfect and have the right volume. They're covered, and I don't have to worry about that. So again, program 1 for the fuzz. Program 2, this is the compressor. Program 3 is going to be the compressor and channel 1 of the Dual Fusion, which is kind of like my slide preset. Program 4 is going to be just the light gain. And then program 5 is going to be the light gain and the heavy gain. Alright, and now if I wanted to switch to a single coil guitar, super simple. So I switch my guitar, hit the bank button, 2 is lighting up, then I can hit any of these patches to engage bank 2. Remember, like I said, sorry this is a little out of tune. Bank 2 is with the Archer on for most of all the settings. This is going to account for the difference in volume I'm getting between a humbucker guitar and a single coil. So this lets me use the same effect settings on all these pedals, and they're going to react in a similar fashion as if I were playing with the high output humbuckers. Okay, so program 1 is the only one that I'm actually not using the Klon for, and that's because that would just be too much gain, I think, coming from the fuzz. So program 1, again, is just the fuzz. Program 2 is going to be the Archer and the compressor. Program 3 is the light gain here with the compressor and the Klon. Program 4 is going to be just the light gain. Light gain and the Klon, I mean. And then program 5 is the Klon, the light gain, and the heavy gain on the Dual Fusion. Now the other way you can use this is if you want to switch into edit mode, you can use all 6 loops here. You can use all 6 buttons, so each button's going to control a loop. When you're in edit mode, you'll hit loop 1, and this will engage whatever's in loop 1. Loop 2, you'll engage whatever pedal is in loop 2, and loop 1 will still be engaged until you turn that off. So you can have any combination of those pedals if you want to work in edit mode. They also call it live mode in the manual, I think. So anyway, just a little run through of how I'm using that. Hope you all enjoyed that quick little rundown. Leave me a question if you got some, and stay tuned for the big rig build in a couple weeks here. So thanks for watching. See you in the next one.